Can't hear you, sir.
I'm not too sure what's going on.
Yes, it's not fine.
Oh, you can hear me now. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so before we can start, is there anything on what we did yesterday that you'd like to just confirm or ask about before we continue with AI development frameworks? By the way, can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Any question? All right. So basically, yesterday we spoke about Mindspoke, and by the way, guys, if you miss any session or you've missed any session before, I'd advise that you go on YouTube and watch the session for today so that as we're moving, we understand all the terminologies, all the words we are using and all the concepts, so you will perfectly understand what we're talking about. So just try and make sure that we understand each other there. Can anybody tell us what is Mindspoke? Like when we're talking about Mindspoke, what is Mindspoke? What is Mindspoke? Anyone can tell us what is Mindspoke? You can summarize it in your own words, in your own understanding. What is Mindspoke? Anyone can tell us what is Mindspoke in your own words?
Let me try, sir. According to me, Mindspoke is a platform where we can make machine learning. We can teach the platform machine learning and deep learning.
Yes. Anybody else? Anybody else? What is Mindspoke? Telma, what is Mindspoke in your understanding? And what about non-fundo? What is MindSpore? Can you understand it?
So MindSpore, right, is a tool that is used to develop AI solutions that actually incorporate cloud data, and I forgot the other one. Yeah, I think there's three things that it actually joins together, and then you develop a solution that will work in one environment using MindSpore, because it has all of the, yeah. Can I just stop there? It has all of the components needed to develop a solution that will work in any device, I think.
Yes. Yeah, so basically, as you both said, MindSpore is just a platform. It's a framework that help you build machine learning models. That's it. So what you said, when you're talking about MindSpore being an all scenario framework, it's because you can build models that work on the cloud, on devices, and on edge, right? So yeah, so MindSpore is just a framework that will help us build these machine learning models. Instead of you having to write all the code from the first line, building models and everything, you can use this framework to make it easy for you. All right. So that's what MindSpore is. So if we are on the same page, so MindSpore is just an AI framework for building this machine learning. And yesterday we've seen as we have different tools which we can use inside MindSpore to try and build different things. For example, we spoke about the dev kit, which is the MindSpore dev kit, which was a platform that can help us publish our own code, publish our own model, or get from other people. You know, we have, for example, the MindSpore Lite, which is a tool that helps us to deploy our model. Okay, so for those who missed, if anyone missed yesterday class, we'll upload it on YouTube. You just go back to the part. Okay, so we started yesterday. We started with tensors, right? So we spoke about tensors. I gave you the example of watching a movie in 2 dimensions or watching the movie in 3 dimensions. So there is a difference between that, because you have more information when you're watching in 3 dimensions, because you are also seeing, you're not just seeing the height and the width, but you are also seeing how deep the movie is. You feel like you are inside the movie. It's like in the reality, right? So now when we're talking about data, in the case of a tensor, so when we're giving a tensor, that means that information comes with all the information about that data. So in different dimensions, it's not just a unique data. And we mentioned that when you talk about the tensor, this is a multidimensional array. So a zero-order tensor will be called a scalar, which is, for example, your data is just number 5, right? And then you have a first-order tensor, which is a vector that can be represented as 1, 2, okay? And then you have a matrix, okay? All right, so in MindSpore, the way you call a tensor is just by using the syntax MindSpore.tensor. Okay, so there is different data type in MindSpore. So what is a data type? A data type is, in programming, when we talk about the data type, is the nature of the data you are using. For example, if I can ask, if I have an input that talk about the age of the person, for example, the age is equal, in my database, I have a data called age equal maybe 21. Can anyone tell us which data type is this?
It's an int.
It's an int. Perfect. Right. So when we're looking at numbers, for example, numbers that do not have a comma or anything, we have them as the int, right? So these are integers. So these are integers. So you've learned about those things even in mathematics. So you have the integers, you have your real numbers and all those things. But now, if we have a comma or something like that in programming, we're going to call it a float. But some other programming language will call it a double or something like that. But there's a very slight difference between that, right? So we're going to have it as a float. So in MindSpo, we have many data type, right? So MindSpo, just like other frameworks such as TensorFlow and PyTorch, they use tensors, right? Which means that every tensor must have a data type. So in MindSpo, we have data types such as int, uint, and float, right? So as you see here, so when we're dealing with numbers, we're going to have integers, uint, or float. And then when we're dealing with tensors, we have an array of the same type. That array can have floats. Even if it's a list, we can have a list, but those, we need to know which type of data we're going to have there. We can have, for example, an int, float, you understand? So now, so to try and create a data type object in MindSpo, we use the syntax MindSpo dot dtype, data type, right? So MindSpo is compatible with data type in NumPy and Python, and you can also convert the data type like this, from NumPy to Python. So when you think about the integers, when you talk about integers, so integers will have the example type would be the int 8, 16. You know, there's a bit of a difference in terms of how many bytes we have. Okay, so when you look at these data types, so basically the computer does not understand normal numbers or normal alphabet. The computer converts everything into bytes and into binary numbers, into zeros and ones, right? So every number that you put or every data that you put is converted into that. That's why when we say int 8, int 16, so it has to do with those type of how many the computer can take, how the data type are being converted, right? So an int will be considered to be a signed whole number, for example, 21, right? But an assigned and unsigned, I mean, this is signed, this is unsigned. The unsigned int, when you talk about unsigned int, this is, we confirm that, so we want to make sure that this number is greater than 0, because in the computer, even if the value is, let's say your value is -3, maybe you were having a data with temperature, -3. So this can still be used as a data type int, but we want to make sure that we have another data type which can confirm that this number need to be greater than 0, greater or equal 0. So if the number is greater or equal 0, you can use as a data type an unsigned int. So that's the difference between unsigned int and int. Okay, and then you have float. So floats are basically decimal numbers. So if this, for example, you have the weight of the person, which is equal to maybe 72.5. Okay, 72.5. So this here, the data type will be a float. Because if you use an int, your computer will tell you it's an error. Your computer will return error for that. Okay. So, and then we have other data types such as Boolean. Boolean is a true or false, you know, things with only two values, and you have other data type. Okay. such as strings. So when we talk about strings, strings are words, but mostly we don't really use strings in training models, because remember, there need to be calculation that need to be done. That's why even when you're looking at the words in computing, in machine learning, words are converted into numbers so that the calculations can be done. Because remember, all the features need to be converted into numbers, and we will mention more ways of converting that. So when we convert it into numbers so that the calculations can be done. All right, so why a data type really matter in MindSpo? Because we need to know what type of data we are dealing with so that the computer knows exactly how you can try and deal with that. All right. So now when we moving to the next, okay. So now when you're running the whole environment, the whole framework, right? There is certain setups that need to be done, okay? So when you run MindSpo, you need to specify the environment parameters. So we have what we call the graph mode. So you need to specify what graph mode you're going to use. You need to specify what device will your model be installed on, right? Okay. And then the memory size that you require for your model. Okay, so now there is certain syntax or certain APIs that can help you get a detailed information about the current running environment. So you need to know what's the current running environment. And from there now, we can be able to say what type of environment we need. All right. So we need to say, for example, what's what graph mode as MindSpo has to choose, right? It can be something that is compiled or right, or what we call an eager mode, right? And then you need to decide what device, the hardware that you're going to use. Are you running it on maybe on an Ascent server, on the CPU, GPU, things like that. Okay. And then you can use this type of syntax to say to the machine it needs to enable a parallel mode or parallel training, right? So you have different attributes that you can give to your MindSpo settings when you're running the environment. So that is very, very important. Okay, so if I can give you an example, I don't know if this is gonna. Let me see if I can write this. So, for example, here, if I'm trying to looking at the type of mode that I can use, I have this MindSpo context here. So this MindSpo context.set context, this is used to set the context for running the environment. So if I want to set, for example, here, where I can maybe have, let's see, can I run? So basically, if I want to set a context, I can have something like use that syntax there in my environment, set context. And then from here now, as I'm setting the context now, in brackets, that way I'm going to have all the information about my context. For example, okay, the mode is text dot the type of mode that I want. If I want to say, if I want to use an eager mode or graph mode, I can decide to say I'm using Mindspo must use the graph mode, and then the device targets, right? The top device that I'm going to use. So device target will be, for example, I want to use the Ascent server. I can say Ascent. Okay, so this is how you can set a context. So this is how we can set the environment in which we want to run our program. Okay, I'm just going to put the example. Okay, so this is what it means. And then the harder gate is to obtain the attribute that we had. So if we use the get, the program is going to tell us what the current environment is running on. And then you have that. So the device targets can be your Ascent, GPU, or CPU, right? So if we use Mindspo context get context, so this is going to print or going to tell us the attribute value in the context according to the input key that we're doing. So we can check what context this is using. Okay, so basically our device target here can either be the Ascent or the CPU or GPU. All right, so that's what that means. But if now we want to get this, for example, we want to get this. So what we're going to do, we're going to use that syntax. I don't know. Did I double click on it? Okay, we're going to get this. So we're going to write this get context if we want to have a certain information. So we have, for example, get context. And now in this case, now in brackets, remember this, we're going to obtain the attribute value according to the input key. So we're just going to have this syntax, and then we write in brackets. Now, this time, in bracket, we don't have to write the whole thing because this is to set it. In bracket, we can say maybe mode. If we say mode, okay, let's say when we were creating, when we set our environment, we use these settings. Now, if we run this, what do you guys think it's going to display? If we run this, and then in bracket, we put mode, what do you guys think it's going to tell us? What do you think is going to be the output of this? If we run this, what will be the output? Anyone?
Isn't it gonna say graphic mode?
Yes, it's gonna give us graph mode. So that will be the output of that. All right. So so that's exactly how the machine will work. So those are just setting the environment. Okay. So we need to understand that in Mindspo, the context. Okay, the context of Mindpo can be used to set up the current operating environment, including the execution mode, execution backend, and feature switching. So basically, we have, for example, there we use the device target as a parameter, and then we can say what we want to use. For example, we want to use the Ascent, GPU, or CPU. So that's how we set that. Okay, so if we're building the graphs, we can say set graph and all those things. So all those information that we can set up, we can use this. Okay, so now we need to understand that Mindspo provide a dataset submodule for processing the dataset. Okay, so what does that mean? So when we're looking at Mindspo, Okay, so when we have mindful.dataset, so here now we're dealing with our data. So this module, by calling this module, it's going to provide the API for loading, right? Loading the data set. So which can be the data set that we're loading from a different area, such as public data set or custom data set. Okay, so the data set here in this case can be a pre-trained model, right? That already exists somewhere which we want to use. Remember what we said yesterday, that we could use a pre-trained model and include it into our system and try to work from that instead of recreating everything, right? So now, in this case now, we're going to have mindsport.dataset to try and load the dataset, to process and play with the data. Okay, so we basically are going to build like an efficient pipeline of training, evaluating, and inference as well in terms of using the data and everything. So this module will really help us to, I can say, optimize for high speeds, just processing, especially when we have large data sets, like many images, text, speech tasks, So when we're dealing with things like this, we can just use what are called the pre-trained model that we can use, right? Or we can also call them pre-built loaders, right? So the type of data sets you have, for example, the MNIST. So we will deal with this one, the MNIST. When we practice, we're going to practice with this. When we're going to take the MNIST, so basically we're going to deal with the data set of the handwriting numbers. Okay. All right. So you can easily define your own data set structure. We can load anything that we want in our data set. And when I'm talking about load anything that we want, it means that we can find from some sources, right? From some sources on the internet or anyway, which can be public data sets, such as this MNIST. So this MNIST is a data set that we will download it together. It's a data set that will give us numbers were written. So those are handwritten numbers. So the MNIST data set is open source. It's out there on the internet. So it's basically a large collection of handwriting. If I'm not mistaken, is about 60,000. There's about 60,000 images in this data set. So the MNIST data set can be found on the internet. It has about 60,000 images. So instead of you collecting all these data, instead of you trying to see, okay, where are you going to get this data? Where you're going to collect, now you start collecting pictures of handwritings and, but this data set, which is a public data set, the MNIST, is out there on the internet. So it's a data set where you can just download it. You already have 60,000 pictures. All right. So I'm just trying to see. I want to give you an example here. See that? I want to show you. What is the MNIST data set. Okay, so this is basically the data set that that you have. So in this MNES data set, which you can download, it has about 60,000. Yes, I was right. It has about 60,000 pictures of data that you can use for training your model, and about 10,000 pictures that you can use for testing your model. So you can see, and these pictures are just pictures of numbers such as 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 9, written by people in different handwritings. So now you can use those data to train your model to try and teach your model how to detect numbers. So when you look at those, this type of data here, these are public data. They are out there in the public. So the MindSport.data set is a syntax that can help you import this data into your program. You understand? So that's what it means. So you can see people actually download this. So there is many other data sets out there that do different things. So if I have to look at, let me see here, data sets, how many data sets are present here? You see, so basically you see like here, there's many data sets, medical information data sets, Netflix movies and shows, So depend on what you actually trying to create. You don't have to be looking for data sets. There is many platforms where you can actually collect data sets. There's people who have already collected the data set, and then you can use those data sets to train your model. As you can see here, AI generated text data sets, they are present day, So there is many type of data sets that you can use and train your model. So there's no need for you to basically having to do more research and collect the data and everything. No, you can take this data and actually just make sure the data are clean, and then you can deal with them, right? Even when we talk about using pre-trained model, so you have certain model that you can take from here and just use them, depending on what the model do, right? You have, for example, this one, the card image dataset classification. So this is already dealing with a classification problem. Okay, so there is many open source, many data sets out there and many pre-trained models. So things can be easy as you are training the model. If you know exactly what you are doing, you need to know that you are trying to get the data set, or you are trying to train a model, or you're trying to get a pre-trained model. So no matter what you're trying to do, there is always a solution which can be easier to follow than having to recreate everything. Right. Sure, I'm trying to go to the next slide. And this is frozen. Guys, can you guys hear me? I think my MS Team is frozen. So I'm not sure if you guys can hear me.
We can hear you.
You can hear me, okay.
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
Yeah, because it's frozen, it's not allowing me to actually. Oh, okay, now it's fine. I can share a different page. You understand? So basically, it's about understanding what you're trying to do, and then you will know how you can do it. Okay. So you have on your MindSport, you have the ability of using a pre-trained model. You have the ability of using available data sets from public platforms, right? So you have all those options. All right. Okay, let's see, this is not displayed. All right, guys. So, all right. So that's an example of how you can deal with adding the data. Okay, but there's many syntax that you can use. But remember, mindsport.dataset will help us to load the data from outside. Okay, so we have many ways that we can train. We can train the model. Okay. Trying to show this slide. I don't know why it has a blank page. Okay, so there's many ways that you can train the model, and when we're training our model, remember last time what we say, that we are using our GPU, the CPU. You know, those are just computing powers that are being used in order for us to be able to train this model or use this model in a real environment. So you will need to also know what type of devices you will need to use, what type of hardware you will need to execute your model. So that is also something very important, because now by using these platforms or these devices, because we will need to allocate a certain memory, right? So because memory is going to be very important. You know, your CPU, even on your computer, when you are trying to use your computer, you can't specify how much of the CPU you want maybe your Microsoft Word to use, or another software that you are using. Sometimes you're watching a movie on Netflix from your computer. So you can't really specify how much of the CPU you want your browser to use. But now, when we're training models, we need to make sure we have the ability of knowing how to set how much memory we need, or else we're not going to be able to really train our model properly. Okay, so in MindSpo, you can do all those settings. You can actually, you have the option of choosing anything that you want, depending on how much you want your model to perform, right? So you have different data type, different sizes of data that you're dealing with, different operating system. So you don't want to have a high memory used for the system and the system is overloaded, but you want to make sure that all those settings are set properly. Okay, so we spoke about running the environment. So when we run the environment, we're going to set how we're going to train the model. So we're going to set the type of mode that we're going to use. Give me a second, guys. Let me just. This is not giving me an option to make it larger. Okay, right, let's carry on. All right, so there's many more that you need to choose. So and then we have in MindSpo, when we're dealing now, I was saying we're dealing with the data. So we basically can have the MindSpo.dataset, as I said, which will help us deal with loading the data and all those things. So you can basically read the data and determine how much memory the data will take. So you have different format of the data in which the data can come. And then you will have certain module in MindSpo that you're going to use, for example, if you want to deal with neural network. You have such a module such as the MindSpo.nn. So this will just provide kind of a building block to create all your neural networks. So basically here, as I'm coding and I'm using this, so the MindSpo.nn will help me create the whole neural network. So if I'm dealing, for example, with a CNN, remember in the CNN, I will have to determine what is the convolutional layer, the details about the convolutional layer, the pooling layers, and that. And then if I'm dealing with an RNN, recurrent neural network. I am going to also set that up. And remember as well, I need to set the loss function. What's the loss function that I want to use for that? For example, if I'm dealing with a classification problem, then I can use, for example, the softmax function, right? So in terms of optimizers, do I want to use an Adam momentum optimizer? You understand? So all these settings that we need to set them under the MindSpore NN. So this module is for creating the neural networks. Okay. All right. So what's next? All right, MindSpore features. As we've mentioned already, that in MindSpore we're dealing with when we're training the model, we choose the mode in which we want to train. We want to use a static graph mode or dynamic graph mode, which we can also call an active mode. So basically, a static mode is when the program is built and executed, right? The graph structure of neural network is generated first, and then the computation operation in the graph are performed. So that is how the graph mode is, right? But in the dynamic graph mode, the program is executed by line, according to how you were writing the program. So basically, the program is going to run from the top to the bottom. So if something maybe that you wrote at the bottom will depend, you wrote at the top, but it's dependent on the information of what you wrote at the bottom, it's not going to be possible because that information the program still doesn't know about it, right? So those are certain things to consider before you can choose between a dynamic graph and a graph mode. Okay, so this is just an example of a code. Okay, when creating tensors here, so we make sure we import all these modules. So if we know in your code you're gonna deal with neural networks, you need to make sure that you've imported MindSpore.nn. So this module is imported in your platform to say you're going to use neural network. You've imported so all the modules that you're going to use here before we can start. Remember, we said what? Before you start in MindSpore, you need to determine the environment. So the environment here, we're going to determine by saying we're going to have the MindSpore.set context, the mode, graph mode, the device, we're going to use CPU here. Now here, we are building a neural network and all that. And then we have our input and output will be tensors. These are how they represented the type. We're going to have floats, so and then we can create our network. And when we look at that, we have this as the output state. All right, guys. So that's the thing now. When we creating all these systems, we need to have an understanding on the type of setting that we need to have and the type of module of MindSpore that we may need in MindSpore. All right, so tomorrow we're going to continue with that and just get more into details about this dynamic graph and this graphs that we actually need to set. All right, so guys, any question? Any question before we can call it a day? Any questions? All right, guys, I think we can turn on our cameras so we can take the attendance and then we can call it a day. All right, guys. Yeah, I will see you tomorrow. Have a great evening. Yes, yes, I can hear you.
Oh, I wanted to ask. So I sent notes on WhatsApp on a Google Drive for AI data and cloud and also big data. Do we follow those notes that Sir sent or the notes on the website?
You say where did you get the notes?
Send a drive. You sent a Google Drive with, I think, a test. It has test books and also videos on big data, AI, and cloud. But then on the website again, there's also like other notes, and it also tracks your progress. Do you use the website or the ones that says sent on WhatsApp?
Okay, I don't know where you got the. I don't know who sent on WhatsApp. I don't know when, but I didn't see anything on WhatsApp because I know what is on WhatsApp are only. Okay, I sent the link to the YouTube, and as well there is a folder that I created on WhatsApp where I said I'm just gonna save whatever information we may need there. So if anybody else sends any other materials, I'm not sure who's the one who sent those materials, but all I can say is all your exams and everything will be based on what is on the platform. So the updating course. And what we are learning now is what is the updated course. And everything I am talking about is what is in the updated course. So anything else that you get from anybody else can be outdated because every 3 months, 6 months, or they update the course.
Oh, okay. Which is what Sir sent on the folder on WhatsApp, not what on the website.
Which WhatsApp you talking about?
The WhatsApp group where Sir sends the link for, isn't Sir every Tuesday, Sir sends the link for the meeting. And then like a few weeks back, Sir also sent a drive, a Google Drive that had like test books before we started, like right before we started with AI.
Yeah, it's not a Google Drive. It's a different. You are you talking about the mega.nz?
No.
Okay, I don't know in which group you have it, but if you go on the current WhatsApp group in the I don't know who took out that. It was in the pinned message. Okay, I don't know. Maybe the pinned message can only be there for a certain time. But I have sent a
The
link
mega
to.
cloud one.
Yes, I have sent a link to the cloud, the mega.nz. So that link, in that link, you have three folders. You have big data, cloud, and AI.
AI.
Yes. So whatever information I can put in those folders, yes, that can help you. Those are just extras. But normally you follow the notes, you download them when you log into your Huawei Talent. And it's exactly what I'm talking about in these classes because that's the updated one. So the only sources that you can have
Registered
to
for, and that's the updated one.
yes, the only sources you can have just to make sure you are on the right track is to focus on what we're doing in this class and what is currently on the Huawei platform and whatever we're putting in those folders. I'll just try and get that message again and pin it to the group so that you can have access to it.
Thank you, sir.
All right. All right, guys. Have a great evening. I'll see you tomorrow.